Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make raw cheese in the Instant Pot, and specifically it's going to be cheddar cheese. And actually this is one of the first cheese making recipes that I ever did. So I would say that a beginner could do this recipe. I wouldn't necessarily designate it as a beginner recipe though. I would say it's more like medium. But a beginner could do this, and you can do this without any special equipment other than the Instant Pot. And I have taken this recipe and adapted it for the Instant Pot. Usually people make cheese on the stove, but I don't like to do that because I like the temperature control that I get with the Instant Pot. And I don't like having to mess with all the equipment. I like to just do it in the Instant Pot because it's easy, you just set it, and it allows you to like walk away and do other things. And it's important to note before you do this recipe that it is going to take you a good 5 to 6 hours to make, to get from milk to cheese curd. And then if you want to do additional steps to make it into a hard wheel of cheese, it's going to take a little bit longer than that, but like a few days to a couple weeks depending on what you want to do. But you do not need any special equipment to make cheese curd. If you want to make a wheel of cheese, then you will need a cheese press. You want to age the cheese, you'll need cheese wax, but you could easily do this without a cheese press. And that's how actually I would originally make this cheese. I always just made it into cheese curd, and then I would just eat the cheese fresh, and it's really delicious that way. And so anyways, make sure that you have 5 to 6 hours blocked off. So you want to do it on a day that you're going to be home and you're not into any major projects. So for this recipe, you're going to be doing a step, and then you'll step away for maybe 30 to 60 minutes, and you got to come back. So you need to be able to pop in and out of the kitchen in that 5 to 6 hour period. So another thing I recommend is taking this recipe step by step. It's really easy to get overwhelmed when you're first making cheese, especially, or anything that involves like lots of steps. And it's really not that bad. It's just that when you're looking at the recipe, you're like, whoa, this is really complicated, and it's really not. So there are a couple things that you do need to have. One is a colander or a strainer, and you'll need it to be able to sit on top of the Instant Pot. What you're going to be eventually doing is putting the cheese curd over top of the whey, and you don't want the colander to sit inside of the Instant Pot. You want to be able to sit on top of the Instant Pot. And then you're of course going to need at least a gallon of raw milk. In the Instant Pot, it can only hold about a gallon, so I make a gallon at a time. Typically, when people are making cheese, they'll make like 2 to 4 gallons at a time, but I have modified this recipe for 1 gallon. So this is going to be a small batch, and that's maybe one of the downfalls of this recipe is it only does small batches. But if you're like me, I don't have a dairy cow, I don't have like tons of extra milk laying around. I just like to make small batches here and there. The Instant Pot is perfect for that. And then the other thing you're going to need is a culture, and I'll have links for everything that I'm using down below. I use about a little bit more than half of this packet, one of these packets, and you store this in the freezer. And I've gotten both of these from New England Cheese Making Supply, which I'll have linked in the description box. And I'll also have the recipe for this. If you're looking for the written out recipe, I'll have that linked in the description box as well. And then the other thing that you are going to need is you're going to need rennet, and this is a vegetable rennet. And you really don't need a lot of this, so when you're measuring it out, you just want to carefully like squeeze out drop by drop, because it's only like 5 to 10 drops of the set you're going to need. So you're going to start by pouring your gallon of milk into the Instant Pot, and then you're going to set the Instant Pot to sous vide and set the temperature to 86 degrees. And the time doesn't matter a whole lot. I usually set it to at least 3 or 4 hours. Then I let it sit for a little bit until it reaches 86 degrees, which takes about a half hour or so. And when that happens, I sprinkle half or a little bit more than half of the culture onto the milk and stir it in really well. And then I let the pot sit for another 45 to 60 minutes. Before you get to the next step, you're going to need to dissolve an 1/8 teaspoon of rennet into an 1/8 cup of water. And it's a very small amount, so make sure you're very careful when you're measuring it out. After 45 to 60 minutes, you're going to pour the dissolved rennet into the milk, and you're going to stir it really well. And then you're going to let this sit for 30 to 45 minutes. You'll know you're ready for the next step, which is cutting the curd, when the curds are solid. And when you cut into them, you'll see a clearish yellow liquid pour in the crack. That means it's ready to be cut. So you're gonna cut them holding the knife vertically, and you're gonna make a grid-like pattern, and you want each little cube to be about a 1/2 inch thick. Once you cut the curd, you can cover the pot and press cancel. Then you're gonna press the sous vide button again, and you're gonna set the temperature to 102 degrees, and make sure you set the time to at least a few hours. I would recommend 3 or 4 hours. And then you can just walk away and let the pot warm up. It will let out a little beep once it reaches 102 degrees, so you have to listen carefully. And then you let it sit for another 30 minutes once it's at 102 degrees. And during this time, you just want to pop in the kitchen and stir the curds occasionally. After 30 minutes, the curds should have sunk towards the bottom of the pot, and you're gonna scoop them out into a colander or a strainer that you're gonna sit on top of the pot of whey. So it should be suspended over top of the whey. It shouldn't be sitting inside of the whey. And you're gonna let this sit for about 60 minutes. You're gonna keep it covered. During this time, you're gonna flip the curds a few times, and you're gonna leave the temperature set where it is. Once 60 minutes has passed and you flip the curds a few times, you're going to remove them and cut them into strips. They kind of look like thick French fries. That's how I think of them. And if you've ever had cheese curd before, you'll have an idea of how thick the curd should be. About 1 centimeter thick is what I recommend. And then you're gonna toss the curds in a bowl with a tablespoon of salt until the curd is thoroughly coated in the salt. And if you don't want to mess with the cheese press or anything, then you can eat the curd as is. It's really delicious and squeaky. So for the purposes of this video, I made a makeshift cheese press. I don't actually own a cheese press, but I have pressed cheese in this setup before, and it doesn't turn out as well as it does if you have a cheese press. You're still gonna see the outline of the cheese curds on the sides of the cheese, but inside it will be firmly pressed. And I pour the curds into a colander lined with cheesecloth, and I sit that over top of a drying rack, and then underneath that you want to put like a cookie sheet or some kind of pan to catch the dripping whey. Then you want to sit a plate or some kind of flat bottomed pan that will fit inside the colander. And then I set a few cans in there and then put a weight on top. And you could use cookbooks. I just happened to have a kettlebell, so I went ahead and sat that on top. It was about 10 to 15 pounds. And then I just let that sit for overnight. And since this was the middle of the afternoon, I was able to flip it right before I went to bed. And then the next morning when I woke up, I transferred it to the fridge. And you can additionally let this age for another 1 to 2 weeks in the fridge if you want. If you want a more sharp cheddar, you're gonna wax the cheese and then let it sit for 2 to 6 months or even more, depending on how sharp you want the cheddar. The whey can be saved for multiple uses. It can be used in soup broth, it can be used to cook things like rice, it can be used in other lacto ferments. So make sure you save the whey and don't throw it out. So if you make this raw cheddar, let me know in the comments down below. The written out recipe as well as the culture and rennet I use is linked in the description box. And I hope to see you guys again soon. Be well, guys.